Hi, I'm DJ Sixsmith. You're watching The Sit Down. Look who we got. Sarah Baker's in the house. What's going on?
How are you?
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you. Thank you for having me.
You got it. How's everything going?
Good. New York City.
Yeah.
Exciting.
How long you been here?
Just got in last night, but I love coming here.
Have you ever lived in New York, or
No,
you just popping
I want
in?
to. Yeah.
Can we make this happen? Is it
Yeah.
gonna be a thing?
Do you have a job for me?
I'll figure something out.
Okay, great.
Let's just create a show right now.
Great.
Right?
Perfect.
Do you like popping into New York every once in a while?
Yeah, I wish. My dream is that I would get a job where I would actually be able to live here for a little while, but it hasn't happened yet. I've worked here twice, like actually, shot something, and they were both super fast. Like
Was it
2
shows
days.
or was it movies?
Yeah, Louis and what is it called? John Oliver's show.
Oh, Last Week Tonight?
Last Week Tonight,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've done a ton of different things in your career, so I would imagine that remembering it all at a certain point could be a little bit challenging.
I have a terrible memory. So
That's good on top
if
of
I
that.
blank out during this interview, just
I'll know.
yeah.
I'll know the reason. Well, why don't we start with the Kominsky Method, because that seems
Yeah.
like a really fun show and obviously great people to work with. But
Yeah.
what does this chapter of your career look like for you? How's it been so far?
I mean, it's been great. It was sort of. I feel like everything. It's like, oh, this thing leads to this thing, leads to this thing, and I met Chuck Lorre for this.
Yeah.
I love that this is just going to be here.
Yeah,
for
it's
the
just
whole
you're just
time.
gonna be chilling here the entire time,
This
young
woman,
Sheldon.
this
Yeah.
sad woman, by the way. But they were casting the librarian for young Sheldon, and I hadn't met Chuck before. Oh, I guess I had, because I did an episode of Mike and Molly, but it was
Okay.
like very,
Right. Very
just brief. Yeah. And I don't even know. I haven't talked to him about it if he really remembered me from that. But they brought in a few of us to read for this librarian, and I ended up getting that job. And then a few days later, the casting director called and was like, Chuck is actually working on a new show, and thinks she might be right for this other role, and that was Mindy in the Kominsky Method. And so I did go in and read for it, and I don't know if they were entertaining anybody else, but ended up getting that. So all of a sudden now, like, Chuck Lorre is keeping me employed, thank God.
That's pretty crazy when you think about all those different projects leading up to this.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny sometimes the way it can be just timing, I think because when I did Young Sheldon, it was like right when he was writing the Kominsky Method, and it made him think like, oh, maybe.
Right, you were front of mind at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh, Sarah's in this show, I got this show coming out. Let's just go with people I know. Right?
I think that's like, to me, that's like a good 75% of getting jobs is seeing somebody and being on their mind at the right time when also the right thing comes up, and they're like, oh yeah, let's put those two things together,
And I think you're smart also, because like TV is so splintered right now, so it's like, all right, people watch Young Sheldon, people are on Netflix watching the Kominsky Method, they see you in Big Little Lies, like how do you go about choosing your different projects and just making sure that you are front of mind?
I mean, I would love to say that it's all
calculated.
Orchestrated and calculated, but a lot of times it's just how things, you go where you're wanted, I guess. And yeah, it just sort of worked out that way. But it is nice to be on like a show like Young Sheldon that so many people watch. My aunts and uncles can watch.
Right,
or,
so you got that audience automatically.
Yeah, and then Netflix, might take a little more coaching for some people, but then obviously like younger people are like so into it, and so it's kind of nice to have both, and such different obviously kinds of shows.
Absolutely. So what have you learned about yourself as an actor from hanging out with Michael Douglas and Alan Alda and all these greats around the set?
Alan Arkin, they're both amazing. Michael is amazing. First of all, they both have such iconic voices.
Right.
So, like, I remember sitting at the first table read, and, obviously I knew I was going to play Michael's daughter, and, but hearing that voice, I was like, it's like, oh God, the nerves just kicked in, because then I just started picturing, like, him delivering his, like, greed is good speech from, like, Wall Street, and I'm like, oh, okay, oh God, you're going to have to, like,
have to click into reality.
Yeah, there are so many moments as an actor when you work with people that you've admired and you've just watched for so long, and you have to like really be like, okay, you're here with them, you're in the scene with them, so you can't just be like, oh my God, this is cool, they're great. And And Alan Arkin is such a like actor's actor. Yeah. Every single actor is always like, he's my favorite. I'm in love with him. And I happily get to say like, he's amazing. He's so funny. He loves to like. First of all, he wants to talk to anybody. He doesn't really want to talk about like Hollywood stuff, but
what
he will
does he like to talk about?
I mean, anything else, you know, what are you interested in? What are you interested in? That's what he wants to talk about. Like, where do you live? What do you do? What do you like to read? You know, anything. And he likes to joke around and do bits, which...
That's cool.
You know, I think sometimes when you get older, you know, he's 85. I think people think... That's crazy. And people always want to, rightly so, but want to treat people like him with a lot of deference and very reverential. And he just is not that kind of person. He likes to just joke around and be funny. I mean, he's like one of the original members of Second City, so improv is like second nature to him, you know.
And I'm sure that resonates with you, given your comedic background as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's fun to work with people who just you want to have that like play banter, you know. I always gag when actors are like, we just play together. And,
well, I was going to say, that is like the most common thing that people say, but I do understand why it's
I mean, it's just because it helps you, your relationship just speeds up when you can off camera be, it doesn't even have to be joking around, but just like have that interaction with somebody, and it just makes it more fun too when it's somebody that likes to have fun. And the cool thing for Alan on the second season is, you know, in the first season, it's, you know, it's pretty sad. He's lost his wife. Right. And in the second season now, he's, you know, stepping into romance again. And it's, so you got to see Alan Arkin at, like, prime Alan Arkin hilarity. And then now Michael this season is the one who's getting, his character's kind of getting dumped on, basically. Yeah. So kind of a role reversal a little bit for them.
And I think it's interesting that we're having TV shows that are featuring older people, you know, and just saying like, this is what's going on when you age, right? You're in your 70s and 80s and like, these are the problems you're dealing with.
Right.
Like, I feel like these people were kind of neglected for a long time on television, you know?
I know, and that was Chuck's whole thing is, you know, people say like, why did you create the show? And he's like, because I was like living it. I'm like, my body is falling apart.
What am I going to do about it? Yeah. What do my relationships look like? You know?
Yes, exactly. Like what, you know, it's a different thing when you have kids when they're little. You know, okay, now the kids are older. They have their own problems. Like, and have you fostered those relationships? Have they become what you want? Like, you know, with Mindy and Michael's character, it's like, okay, maybe the relationship, you get the feeling that the relationship probably hasn't always been great, but now he's worked on, you know, making that a good relationship again. And there's just so much, and like you said, there's just so much that's not covered. There's just not a lot of shows out there that are dealing with older people's issues. Right. And, you know, I think people are hungry for that. And it's like, you know, when we were kids watching the Golden Girls, it's the same thing. It's like, who knows why, but you just love it. It's like, I guess it's getting a peek into a world you're not yet familiar with, you know, because I know there are young people watching, which makes me sound, because I'm 83 years young. But, you know, college students watching Grace and Frankie and hopefully our show. And it's you know, everybody wants to see like, okay, what is this other world that I don't know about yet?
And you were on Grace and Frankie also?
I was,
That's right. So you're one of the few people that's probably done both, I would say, right?
Yeah, maybe, Right? I guess probably, just because we haven't had a ton of guest stars on our show. Right? Yeah, exactly.
So I'm sure it's interesting for you that you've been in both of those worlds. So how would you compare? Because those shows get compared to a lot. How would you compare those worlds?
I mean, obviously on Kominsky Method, I'm just more a part of it, so I see it more day to day. But I think, I mean, I think they're both exploring those issues, and also not. You know, I think Grace and Frankie has a lot of other storylines, but a lot of it is to do with aging too, and what it means to be an older woman, and obviously that's a totally different thing from being an older man, and I mean, and both with like legendary actors in them that you pretty much want to see do anything, so that's a win, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, why don't we talk about Big Little Lies, because I told you off camera I just watched that. That was intense.
Yeah.
There was a ton to digest there. So for you, like, you're kind of just popping in there every once in a while with some important lines. You're giving some side eyes there.
Right, yeah.
So what was it like doing that project?
You know, it was very interesting for that reason. Like, our characters, it was important to see that there's about 10 of us that are these sort of other parents at the school. And, you know, they needed to establish that we're there, we're around when they're at school drop-off, at, you know, kids' birthday parties, but we didn't really have much to do. We were just sort of there. And then really, when you really heard us speak, basically, was in the interrogation room. So it was an interesting process, because really the interrogation room was like a couple of days shooting out of the whole process, and the rest of the time, we're just like
chilling,
lurking in scenes, like, you know, looking, rolling our eyes, whatever. But, you know, to get to work with that group of actresses is like incredible, you know, and to get to be there and just watch how they work, you know, up close was amazing, you know. Laura Dern has been one of my favorites forever, and Nicole Kidman in this.
Nicole Kidman in this is outstanding.
Insane. And Reese is always good, and I've actually worked with Reese before, and I love working with her. She's such a boss, and like also the nicest person. But they're, you know, they're so brilliant. They're producers, Reese and Nicole too, so they're having that level of conversation also. So it's good to see, you know, women in those roles and sort of. And I know this second season, which I wasn't a part of, but they had a woman director, and it's just cool to be around women like that and sort of see how they're balancing everything and making those decisions.
Right. Even for you spend time with Melissa McCarthy, she's another one that I think of where it's like you can just do it all, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and not just acting and not just producing and writing, but she like can design your house for you.
Oh, is that so?
She can make you an amazing drink, or, you know, she's like literally a jack of all trades, but like excels in everything.
She has no flaws.
She has no flaws. It's really annoying, but because she has no flaws, she's also really nice, so you can't
You're like,
hate
you're
her.
a good hang, but like, can you just be bad at something?
I know.
Just anything.
It's so annoying.
So what's the story with you and Bridesmaids? Because you were in like a deleted scene from the movie.
Yeah.
What went down with that?
I got in a huge fight on set. Really
bad?
Really, I hurt a lot of people. Emotionally, not physically. No, it was just a thing of, actually it was really kind, because sometimes when you get cut from something, you like go to the theater and you're like, oh, well, my big scene didn't happen.
So glad I spent $10 on this movie ticket.
But in this case, the producer actually wrote me a lovely note, and Paul Feig wrote me a lovely note and said, you know, when we were putting this movie together, basically, Kristen Wiig's character had a bunch of bad dates that you saw. And in the end, they were like, no, we need one, like, bad guy, which was, like, John Hamm, and then we need, you know, the one good guy that she ends up with. So my scene was with Paul Rudd, and he was like, it seems like it's going to be this perfect connection. Like, it seems very romantic, and he's obviously handsome and charming and funny. And then he basically gets hurt. They're ice skating.
Ice skating, right.
And when he gets hurt, he like loses his mind, like on a kid.
Oh no!
So it was really funny, but I think in the end they were like, it just doesn't fit in the movie. And my part was, I was like a nurse in the roller skating rink, and he like, you know, yells at me too, and is just a general monster. So. Yeah, so they just took the whole thing out.
But at least you got to get a little inkling into what that movie was like, and I'm sure you had some idea that like this thing is going to be a smash.
I mean, with that cast, it's like
incredible.
Oh, incredible!
And just hilarious. Like you can put it on that movie at any point in the movie, and you're like, I'm in. You know, let's spend 20 minutes.
Well, I'm gonna watch this until I have to move. Yeah, so good.
Definitely. So, what are some other projects you've done where you're like, I've really learned a lot here. I've totally enjoyed this. Like I've brought up a few to you, but what pops out in your mind?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think this is a boring answer, but I feel like you learn on every job. I mean, definitely some of my early jobs, I feel like, you know, I did like a one-line part that got cut in Sweet Home Alabama, but that was my first real job.
Right, first movie set.
Yeah, and just to see, I was like, what are all of these people doing? There's like hundreds of people around, and you're like, what? I don't even know. And I just was beyond clueless. The first night I remember getting out of like the little van where they took us over to set, and I had been talking to these women on the van, and they went and sat on a bench. I was like, I guess I'll just sit with them. And they were like, after a while, they're like, did somebody tell you to sit here?
Oh
and I was
my
like,
gosh.
no. But nobody had greeted me because I had one line, so it wasn't like I was a crucial.
But you're
I
just
was
like,
crucial
I'm just
to the
chill
process.
here,
So I was like, I guess I just. And then finally, somebody was like, "Is Sarah Baker here?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's me." They were like, "Come over here." I was like, "Okay." I mean, I just totally.
You just had no idea. You're clueless.
Yeah, and that's why I always tell people, like, people bag like doing background work, but I'm like, if you're new and you really don't know a lot about how it all works, it's a great way to just see, like, just to observe how a set works, kind of in a general way. And I mean, you see, there's obviously hundreds of people here making this show
just
happen
tons.
today.
I mean, you see all the cameramen and women, aka nobody behind the cameras.
AKA literally,
literally
it's
just us
here.
and our friends back
here. But yeah, it's so I don't know. I like to just. And the more I'm in this business, the more I the more you know, so then you can put stuff on top of that. You're like, oh, okay, I see what's going down. Like, it's just, I find it all fascinating. And then obviously the acting side of it, hopefully you're learning and improving all the time.
Was there a point you got to where you felt like, okay, I'm a real actor, like I'm getting parts, like I'm really doing the thing now?
I mean, I feel like it's so gradual that it's only kind of when you look back that you kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, that was a big turning point, or this was, but a lot of it too is like meeting certain people, or like I tested for a pilot that I ultimately didn't get, and then the show didn't last for that long anyway, and you know, and so those are like big disappointments at the time. But that's how I met Allison Jones, who's this amazing casting director, and that's how I met Paul Feig, who didn't even end up directing the show. He ended up leaving too, but that's how I met Paul Feig, which led to him introducing me to Allison Jones, and then I got a part on The Office. Allison Jones later cast me in The Campaign, and then, you know, it just all kind of stacks on each other. So some of the big things are when things don't work out, and hopefully now I'm at the point where I realize, like, sometimes the thing you're really hoping for doesn't happen, and you're like, okay, there must be something else coming around the corner that I'm going to look back and go, oh, that didn't happen, so that this other thing that is better or makes more sense or is a better fit or whatever could happen.
Yeah, totally. What season of The Office was that episode from?
I
was it early or was it late?
No, I think it was like season 5.
Okay, so right in the middle there?
Season 4, season
Up there?
7, season
what do we got? Which
3.
season?
I think it was 6.
Season 6.
6.
Okay. What do you remember from that experience?
It was so cool, because it's funny too as an actor. Like, a lot of times you go on shows, but it's not necessarily a show that you watch.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
You're just doing the part.
But you're like, but that was a show I actually watched. Same thing with Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So you go in there and you're just
You're a fan.
out. Yeah. You're like, oh, here are all the people. Oh my God, there's the precinct or the office. The office I didn't really get to be in, like the office.
The actual office, but like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, it's like this is the precinct.
Yes, it was like crazy. But what did you ask me?
Just what you remember from The Office.
Oh yeah, but yeah, so it was cool, and it was like a pivotal scene for them. So there was another one where, sort of behind the scenes, you're learning like, oh yeah, like they're in season 6. These are their characters. They care about what happens to them. So like, you know, it was, you know, Pam is having her baby.
Right.
Jim and Pam are having their baby. So it was interesting to watch, you know, because it's still a comedy show. So there are jokes in there, but then there were moments where the actress who played, Jenna Fisher, who plays Pam, was like, you know, wanting to be sensitive of like, this is also a real moment for them.
Right.
They're having their baby.
Right, it's an emotional thing.
So like, and it was finding that balance. So I was like, oh, that's interesting just to see that, like, as a guest, you're just kind of popping in. But in that case, it was, you know, it was an important episode for the show.
Totally.
So they were all super invested in it. And yeah, so it's interesting when you come on as a guest because you don't know what you're walking into, and there's a lot of history there, and also just, yeah, a lot of, you know, you take ownership of a character when you're doing it for that long. So it was cool to see that, the way how well they know their characters and kind of want to protect them.
Totally. Yeah, and then also seeing everybody from that show, what they've done after the show too.
Yeah.
It's pretty insane.
Yeah.
Even for you, like all the people you've worked with, just following them along and seeing where they're going, I'm sure that's a cool thing for you too.
Yeah, you know, there are always those people that you, and I, you know, that you spot in something early on. Like I've had people come up to me and be like, I saw you on The Office, and then now I've been kind of tracking you and seeing you pop up here and there. Yeah, and I mean, I feel like we all do that.
Totally.
You know, you see somebody that they could have. There's this actor, Jeff Hiller. I saw him on an episode of 30 Rock, I think, and I just thought, oh my God, who is this guy? He's so funny. Yeah. And so now I've just been like, every time he pops up and something, I'm like, oh, yep, there he is again.
You just need that door to be cracked open, because if you don't get that opportunity, you're just kind of hanging out in oblivion, but boom, you get on that show, you're on The Office, people know you, and now it's all these little things, and like, oh yeah, there's Sarah again.
Yeah,
you know?
and it's I guess it's nice to know as an actor, like, because when you are just doing these little pieces here and there, like, oh, there are people out there that are paying attention, even though my contribution on certain things might have been small, that it's like, you know, you're still kind of making your mark as much as you can.
Yeah, no question about it. So when people check out season 2 of the show, what are some of the big thoughts you want them to have? I
mean, I think, like I said, it's sort of a role reversal for the our two lead guys. For Mindy, she has a love interest that you find out, like, she's had for a while. She just hasn't really told her dad about. So he has to deal with that, and then it turns out to be a much older man, Paul Reiser. And they made him look older. He's very young, but they did age him up.
I gotcha.
And it was funny because I was like, oh, Paul Reiser, because they were like, you know, Michael Douglas's character, he like dates a lot of younger women, so we thought it would be funny if your character then. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, that's a brilliant idea. But then I was like, well, Paul Reiser, he's very handsome. Well, sure, great. And then they're like, no. We're going to give him a gut. We're going to make him put a bald cap on and then do like a wispy ponytail. And I was like, oh, okay.
You're like, thanks, guys.
Right,
really?
great.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
But, you know, he's so funny, and he has a fun banter with Michael. And so, yeah, I think people are going to love him on the show like they love him on everything.
That's awesome. Sarah, good to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for coming in. Check her out, season 2 of the Kominsky Method. That's Sarah. I'm DJ. See you next time.
Bye.
On The Sit Down.